Buy on MTG. Construct your deck. Command your board. Conquer the table.
Hello, everybody in the wide world of web. This is Rob with Buy on MTG. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do an artist spotlight. So the general idea came from actually my wife. When I show her magic cards, I'll show her like what artwork that I think is really cool looking, or something that I think is awesome in its appearance, or even artistic approach to whatever the piece is. And my wife will also ask, "Oh, is that a good card?" And I'm like, "No, it's terrible. I just think the artwork's really cool on it." So when we were discussing that, she's kind of hinted, you really enjoy the artwork of Magic, sometimes more than the card itself. So we had kind of discussed it a little bit, and she asked me pretty plainly, like, who's your favorite artist? And of course, that's an impossible question to answer directly, but the first one that popped into my head was Quinton Hoover. So I'll bring up a picture of him. Quinton Hoover was one of the original artists from Magic the Gathering. He's been doing this since Alpha. And unfortunately, in 2013, April 20th, 2013, he had passed away. So he worked on sets from Alpha through Morningtide. And in that time, it was, I think, 80 cards that he had done. It's saying that one of them is Proposal, and that artwork has never been seen and or confirmed. So if you go to my most expensive cards, I mention or reference Proposal in there, but it's a pretty cool story about Richard Garfield and Lily, his wife at the time, or proposing to wife at the time, but Quinton Hoover did the artwork for a special piece that falls, that nobody's ever seen, and there's single digits of them produced. So I do not have one of those. If I did, it would be confirmed that it was stolen. So and two of the cards that he did were for digital only. So I'll pop those up at the end to show you those last few. Then one of them's an oversized card, but I'll show you that as well. In addition to Magic the Gathering, he worked on some Dungeons and Dragons stuff, Monstrous Manual 2, Book of Vile Darkness, and co-creator of a comic called Morgana X. So like I had mentioned before, Quinton Hoover was one of the original 25 Magic artists. I'm going to link down below an article done by Glenn Goddard in 2013, The Life and Times of Quinton Hoover. It's a pretty short read, but really cool to understand a little bit about what his driving factors were. And as we go through this, I'm going to talk about clear, definitive, like where his artwork style started to change. And a lot of it correlates with not having as much control over the art directive. Because in the beginning, the artist, like in Alpha Magic, the artist received the name of the card, and that was it. That was their directive. So you kind of, as an artist, you had a lot more creativity or creative liberties to take with the piece. And as long as it more or less correlated, they would just use it for that. But gonna start here. This is all of them that have been printed in alphabetical order, excluding the oversized card. It's not in alphabetical order because it doesn't fit. But Akon's Run, just a really cool artwork. When you look at his art styles, and I'm just going to kind of point and peruse through them. I'm not going to read each individual card because we're looking at the artwork. The what it does is irrelevant. But like when we look at this Leprechaun, it's a very hard-lined style, and it's harkened to quite a bit as almost like stained glass work. And I couldn't agree more. Am I going to have a shadow? Yeah, a little bit of a shadow. Let me scoot this over. But yeah, like you could see in this Time Shifted, this artwork style is pretty dramatically shifted. This is more towards the end of production when he didn't have his own just creativity and the freedom to produce how he wanted. Where if you look at like Archangel or this Arkham's Whistle, this is genuinely what his artwork style was, and that's honestly why as a kid I just fell in love with this artwork. It was one of the early on pieces, and I'll mention it when we get to it, but Vesuvian Doppelganger just hooked me. The bears, I mean, just the super intricate line work, and the way that he filled the page is just beautiful. Ball Lightning is such an obscure piece, but man, if I were to think what does a ball of lightning look like, that's what I would come to. Another example of when he started to steer away of what his artwork style truly looked like, because even if we look as late as Tempest, that is still very Quinton Hoover, very, very Quinton Hoover in his artwork style. I like that he was incorporated in the unsets as well. This is a bit of a controversial piece, the Earthbind, because it depicts a female being bound down, but I don't know. I don't necessarily feel like that's what the intention of the piece was. He was thinking it's a fairy, she's bound to the earth, so you're going to be tethered if you're bound. I mean, just purely through the name. One of the anti-cards, just beautiful, intricate artwork within there. Elder Landworm was one of my favorites. It's a terrible card, but man, just the artwork within it, this worm, this giant beast just kind of like hanging out in the sand. Really cool, in my opinion. Emerald Dragonfly. I did skip one. Hold on. Amaru Kithkin. I'm going to have to give Ryan a shout out. This was pretty much his favorite as a kid. Popping back forward. Elkin Bottle. I have a piece of paper that I actually keep in this penny sleeve because the card does nothing with really what it says it does, but I took it out just so we could look at the card specifically. This one's a kind of you could see the transition where Quinton Hoover is going from this ultra hard lined, almost stained glass look to when he started to do more gradient feels, but still feels very Quinton Hoover, but the coloration is a lot more defining versus his hard-lined approach that he previously did. Kind of neat seeing two just happen to fall on the page alphabetically, where it's the same character kind of in a lean back, one arm forward position. Even the foreleg is bent and the aft leg is in a 90 degree. It feels very similar. In total, 3 basic lands. They are all forests though. So this is the first, and this was from the starter deck, I think 1999. And then these are from a Portal set. But yeah, those are the only basics that Quinton Hoover did. Goblin Tutor. There's just so much going on in there. It's really hard you got to zoom in on it. And maybe I'll take that at this point in the video. I'll put the actual hard artwork up and I'll zoom in on it because there's so much going on. It's just pretty amazing. Going back to Guerrilla Chieftains and Alliances, they would do the same card with just 2 different artworks. And there's a couple representations of that with Quinton Hoover doing it. And I just think it's really cool how he approached like the chieftain surrounded by, and then as opposed to just the portrait view of it. The Dark really does have some super cool artworks that, I don't know, it tried to give the essence of the Dark, not just from the perspective of what the set as a whole is doing, but it was more of an aesthetic feel. It didn't have a hard story arc like a lot of the sets do now, like Thrones of Eldraine have a story arc that was assigned to it, where at the point in the game where the Dark or Legends, it didn't have a definitive story that was following it, but it was like an aesthetic or a feel to it. Hammered or Homerid, just the line work and the detail that really brings a facial expression with such minimal work, as far as like the hard line detail, really was super cool. Hem to Turok, an amazing card also, but really great artwork in the perspective where it almost encapsulates this ancient spell with this cloak that's bringing it around. Super cool. Illusions of Grandeur. This adorable little bunny pretending to be this giant dragon, and the whole team that's attacking it is thrown back. Just really cool card. Incoming is pretty sweet. I will say Ivory Garden or Ivory Gargoyle was one of my favorites as a kid, and even more so this Carpulson Yeti, because I don't know how many times I had the conversation when Ice Age came out, but everybody's like, what? This isn't even a Yeti. It's just two people. And I'm like, would you look in the background of the artwork? There's a Yeti that's eating their friend. And had to point it out at least a dozen times to miscellaneous people back in the day. But Morning Tide, one of the last productions of artwork. And you can even see in this one, it's a cooperative piece. He did a couple different cooperative pieces. There's this one, there's a merfolk. But yeah, dramatic artwork style or difference. Like this doesn't even feel like the same artist that produced these. But you know, when at that point in time, Wizards was giving substantially more directive from an artistic perspective on what they wanted in the card. And I get it does correlate what the card does better, but I think hamstringing the artist's freedom to produce beautiful pieces, and really it kind of changed who they were as an artist. I believe in the piece that Glenn does, he actually talks about how much Quinton didn't want to work in this capacity, but you know, you got bills to pay, so sometimes you suck it up. Land Leeches, really cool artwork, has that very strong stained glass feel where you look at Leaf Glider. It doesn't look like it at all. It just looks like a completely different artist did it. And really, I don't like this piece at all, but this piece is amazing. Lesser Werewolf is beautiful, where whoever gave him this directive definitely missed the mark. Some artists, you have to just let them open up and do what they do best. Meek Stone is one of my favorite pieces. I think it really gives the feel like this one stone has sapped all of the energy of this obviously strong and powerful warrior. Just amazing how he captured that feeling and the aura that's going around the warrior himself. Just, man, super cool looking. Nameless Race, really cool artwork. Nettling Imp was one of my favorites, though. Just so much going on in the background, and it almost makes you feel like it's this giant imp until you realize he's sitting next to an inkwell, so he's pretty little. Orcish Healer and Orcish Veteran, he did the orcs for in a very similar artwork style, even though Fallen Empires and Ice Age weren't, don't believe they were back to back. They may have been back to back, but they definitely have a very similar vibe across them. Outbreak is one of the ladders. It just feels like a landscape piece. It doesn't feel like it hones in on anything like Pixie Queen does. And that's really where Quinton's strong suit was. Like, you look at his greatest pieces, like the Gypsies or the Preacher or the Pixie Queen or the Veteran, and you're like, man, that really brings out what that creature is. Then you look at something like Outbreak and you're like, okay, some art director gave him way too much and tied his hands way too much. Halamud is really cool looking beast, and it's another one that there's a lot of individual line work going on. So I might bring this one up a little bit larger so you can see it, but I will bring this Quinton Hoover's signature. I'm trying to bring it back so it's centered. He traditionally would sign along the bottom edge or along the side, and his signature is pretty difficult to find. He was not one that signed a lot of pieces, but because of that, when I do get the opportunity to find it, and unfortunately, this is the only one that I actually have from him. I don't know. They carry a bit of a premium to them because the limited amount. Sorry about that. Pyromancy, like I said, closer to the end, but this one still feels like it's got some of the hard-lined work to it, and it still feels almost like the stained glass, but it's been directed to have more of a gradient aesthetics to it, where I don't know, just not what I think of when I see Quinton Hoover's work. Where you look at the orcs on this raiding party, and that's definitely Quinton Hoover. Regeneration, one of just an amazing piece, and I think it's neat because he does all that ribbon work. Where if we go back to Elkin Bottle, you got that same kind of ribbon work to it. You know, if you're good at something, you do it and you incorporate it pretty regularly. Where Spoils of Evil, another real busy piece. But man, just some crazy artworks. This is the other one that I was mentioning, and it's with Val as well, but another cooperative piece that Quinton did. Tragic Poet. They use this quote in the article from that Glenn Goddard did, but man, just pretty amazing. Just looking at the artwork that he did. I'm gonna go ahead and just jump ahead to Vesuvian Doppelganger. I'll bring up the artwork instead of taking the card out. Vesuvian Doppelganger, not just like at that point in my life, I was also drawing and painting and doing some sculpting with both clay and metal. And I myself as an artist really enjoyed doing pointillism or a lot of ink work. And any time that I would do color saturation, I would use watercolor. And I think just seeing Vesuvian Doppelganger for the first time, it spoke to me because it was in such a similar fashion of just the hard inks. And to me, what appears to be watercolor, I might be mistaken. He may have done it in acrylic, may have even been oil, but I doubt it. But this piece spoke to me so much because it drew me out as an artist who I was, and it gave like that implication. If this guy's doing it at a professional level, maybe I should continue pushing as an artist. And I don't know. I'm going to switch back to looking at newer cards. This is another one where it's another doppelganger. It's another Vesuvian, but just the artwork and artistic approach difference between that point, which was originally an alpha, all the way to this. And I don't know when the original print was. I probably should order the original print of this and replace this Masters 25 because I don't know. I don't want that one. I want the original one. Vidalian Mage, just a beautiful card. And this really feels like that watercolor background with just hard-lined ink as well. Later stage, another landscape. And I get it. It's a beautiful landscape, but I think about who Quinton Hoover was and how he could do landscape work and still have it feel like it's that hard lined. Like if you look at the background of Wrath of God, that's a full landscape, or even the Ave Maya Ancients. It's a landscape work, but it gives more true to form with who Quinton Hoover was as an artist and how he worked, where this feels like somebody said, no, I want you to paint something, but make it look like this person's. And I think that's a travesty to take an artist's hands and tie them like that. Wand of Ith. It's another one that has, similar to that Elkin bottle that we had referenced earlier, regeneration. It's not ribbon specifically, but it's an energy swirl that goes around it. Just beautiful. And we talked about Wrath of God already. This is the other representation of where Alliances had two different artworks. And or two different artworks for the same card, and he did this one similar to the gorillas I referenced earlier. That is actually all but we had the one larger card, the oversized, just beautiful artwork. And I think with how dynamic it feels across the wings and the foreshortening between hands to elbow to shoulders all the way down to the knee, it's really great foreshortening. And yeah, that to me, and I might be wrong, and if I am, pop it down in the comments if you guys or gals think of a different method, but that to me feels like watercolor work. Overall, Quinton Hoover is just an amazing artist, and didn't just draw me closer to the game from a play perspective, but it gave me an alternate appreciation, because I would be lying if I said every artwork in Alpha is just amazing from my perspective. Now, granted, I will 100% agree that art is it's a personal taste, and everyone's is different. Having said that, when you look at some artists are hailed as a great artist by the masses, and that's normally because of a reason, just talent and the vision that they had. And Quinton Hoover was definitely an amazing artist and a huge loss, not just from the art community, but to the world, when he passed. And it's unfortunate, but I can appreciate the 80 pieces that he left for us to appreciate from a Magic the Gathering perspective, and the additional works that he had done within the comic books or illustrations for the Dungeons and Dragons campaign stuff. But overall, if you have one of your favorite artists that you would like me to do a deep dive on, now I'm not going to own all the cards for every artist, and maybe even artists that you as a viewer like, but if I do, I'll incorporate it, and if I don't, then I'll do this deep dive from a digital perspective, and I'll just look at all the cards online along with you and do it in a similar fashion, just without the physical cards in my Kung Fu grip. Overall, I do appreciate everybody taking the time to watch these videos and to like and subscribe, and the comments have made a huge difference. I appreciate all of the interaction that I've gotten from the community doing this. I hope I can brighten your day, or teach you a little something, or show you an artwork that you haven't seen before, or even talk about a game interaction that you maybe haven't thought of. Overall, as I've been mentioning pretty regularly in the end of these, it's almost that time. So make sure you get out there and vote. And I appreciate y'all out there. I'm Rob. This is Bion MTG. Good luck and have fun.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below.